All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I have a whole lot of pilots and aircrew and flight release officers here. We're going to talk about minor issues with flight operations in Utah Wing. Just little things that I run into on a regular basis. Nothing dealing with safety, etc. All right. First, there's going to be some dealing with regulations. We do have a whole lot of new pilots coming in, and so I just wanted to go over this a little bit. As you all know, our main regulation we deal with is Cap Regulation 17-1 flight management. It gets updated about annually nowadays, so you'll want to check on that. Make sure you know what's going on. In addition, Cap Regulation 66-1 aircraft maintenance. Pilots should actually be reading this. There's important information in here. It's not just for the aircraft maintenance officers to work with this. It is being updated and it will get a new number. I saw the number about a week and a half ago, but I couldn't find it again, so I don't know what it is. Finally, Cap Regulation 173.3. This is how everybody gets paid. And if you don't follow very strict guidelines on receipts and so forth, you may be liable for the sortie that you flew. But we'll go over that. All right. When you see the videos to the side, that's just so you can find areas. For instance, here you can get, this shows you how to get to the approved supplements for the Rocky Mountain region. We don't have any for Utah right now. When 66-1, the update comes out, then we should end up with a supplement and it'll be published at that location. That's why I wanted that video off the side so everybody could see how to get to it from the Civil Air Patrol website. Standards, as everybody knows, this is what it was started last year. So regulations don't change that much, but the standards do change on a regular basis. For instance, the approved proficiency flight profiles here, you see that it just changed in February. I would check on a monthly basis. For instance, 71-4, if you don't read it, you may miss out on certain PCT sorties that you can now fly. They change on a regular basis. The requirements change on a regular basis. If you don't use the current version, it may be disallowed and you end up paying for it. And I don't want anybody to have to pay for PCT sorties. One of the big issues that we've run into is training. For instance, we cannot train new mission pilots on a PCT sortie. It's not possible. That's one of the reasons why we went to the new OpsQuals format, where we're trying to do it every week, is for the mission pilots. Mission observers, mission scanners, airborne photographers can be trained on a PCT. If you read the intent in the standard, if you read the intent paragraph, it'll actually talk about doing that. So for instance, an observer trainee can be trained by another observer on the airplane, but that observer who's doing the training cannot be working on their own proficiency. And that's why we can't train pilots, because pilots have to be working on their own proficiency on every single sortie. Any questions so far? Any quick questions? By the way, I'm not going to be able to see hands being raised because of how I got my screen set up here. All right. Finally, with the final one is actually deals with the mission symbols, which is Cap Standard 72-2. The 15 March issue that came out allows pilots in Civil Air Patrol, if they come in through the onboarding program, if they're coming through the renewal of pilot, VFR CAP pilots, which is symbols A0 or A24, they may have, they can have their Form 5 paid for by the Air Force, which is a change because it used to be when it expired, that was it. You could not get the Air Force to pay for it. You had to pay for it for yourself. Now, operation procedures. I'd like to go over a little bit about this. There are two main ones. 73-1 is airplanes and 73-2 is gliders. There's one for balloons as well, but since we don't have balloons in Utah Wing, I'm not going to talk about that. And this is dealing with checklists. In attachment 1, there is an aircrew passenger briefing format. Go through. You don't have to use, it's the template for doing the briefing to give information to the aircrew and the passenger. Now, so our emergency services aircrews, they would probably want to go in there and take a look at that aircrew briefing so that they would know what questions they need to ask of the pilot before they take off. And remember, the mission observer should be having good. The mission observer should have a pretty good idea of what the sortie mission is going to be, and they should be very involved in that aircrew briefing. Attachment 3 has a takeoff and landing briefing template. Take a look at that. What should you be briefing on your takeoff? What should you be briefing on your landings? We've had in Rocky Mountain region since January, we have had 3 major crashes, all on landing. Because we lost, Colorado Wing lost a 172. It is gone, totally destroyed. Utah Wing, we had a nose gear hit first, and we actually had serious damage on that. Fortunately, there was no prop strike, so we didn't have to worry about the engine. Landing is one of the most dangerous things we do, and so we should be briefing those as well as takeoffs. Finally, in attachment 4, there is a post-flight checklist. This is actually required by regulation. This is in addition to the securing checklist that's in the POH. Add that to your, if you have a personal checklist system, put it in there so you go through each of those pieces. We've had our 172s, a lot of times they'll scrape, we'll get a slight tail strike where it'll scrape the tie-down hook. One of the things in the post-flight checklist is to actually check various parts of the aircraft for damage right after the sortie. This is after every single sortie, not after like a sequence of sorties. Now I'd like to, this is for, like to talk about best current practices. If you watch, this goes from the wing, or the video actually starts at the wing website. So you'll be able to get to this memo that I send out. First off, it is not a directive. It is not a regulation. It is not a regulation supplement. The reason for that is I can change this a lot faster if I just have a best current practices that I can send out. We all work together, we do this correctly. As soon as I make it a supplement for regulations, a supplement to the regulations, then I have to start inspecting on that. And I hate to tell you this, but I'd have to bust people if I had to do that. I'd rather just everybody pay attention to this, and we only have to worry about, you know, national Civil Air Patrol regulations and probably Rocky Mountain region supplements as well. We're going to be talking a little bit about receipts. These are the various sections that are in that BCP. So we have receipts. Talk a little bit about the AIF, post-flight reduced fuel, adds B and spot, and then scheduling. So let's start with receipts. Yes, go ahead.
I would just mention for those that are using the CAP provided for flight subscription, the current CAP regulation 70-1, 66-1, and the CAP standards 71, 72, and 73 are included in that in your documents. And if they're included in the documents, that means that they're automatically updated when a new version comes out.
Thank you. All right. Receipts. There is required information that's supposed to be on the receipts. Basically, if you can read on the right here, this comes from 173-3. That was the regulation I talked about earlier. You have to have the pilot in command's name. You have to have the phone number on it, the mission number and sorting number, the tail number, the gallons of fuel, the price per gallon, and the total purchase amount. It needs to be in a single PDF file. You can only upload one file to Wimmers, to a Wimmers sorting. The file needs to be readable, and I'll give you some examples of where they're not readable. They do need to be uploaded in 72 hours. Now, there is an exception to that. If you're at a self-serve pump and it's out of paper and it doesn't print the receipt out for you, and it's on a Saturday night, and you're not going to be, or let's say it's a Friday night, and you're not going to be able to talk to the FBO until Tuesday because it's a 3-day weekend, give me a call or send me a text message. Give me the sortie and say, hey, couldn't get the receipt. We're going to try to get it Monday or Tuesday. That way I'll know about it. And if it goes over the 72 hours, I can say, hey, this is what happened. It's still the pilot's responsibility to upload it, but I'm okay. You know, it can go past 72 hours. All right, so first I'm going to show a correct example of a receipt. All of the receipts I'm showing, I have redacted the pilot's name if it's on there. I'm not worried about which pilots did this because almost every pilot in the wing, including me, has done something wrong on a receipt. So first, the pilot in command name, phone number, and mission number, mission and sorting number. Just write them on the receipt. There's usually plenty of room to write them, and it's easy to do. Next, make sure there's a tail number on there. This actually is a requirement that it can't be written in. It actually needs to be on, printed with the receipt. So at some self-service pumps, you actually have to type the tail number in there. Make sure you get it in. Then, of course, there's the gallons of fuel, the price per gallon, and the total purchase amount. Now, some of you probably are looking at this going, hold on a second, that's not how my receipts look. It's okay. As long as the information is on there, we're good. Now, let me show you an example where some information is missing. Take a look at the credit card receipt and tell me what's missing. Any ideas?
Name?
No? Well, the name's redacted. I redacted the name. There's no fuel quantity and no price per gallon. There is a total price. And there's also a missing, oh, actually, I forgot about this. There's actually a missing tail number as well. But if you look on the other, the line in receipt, the ramp ticket, we do have the quantity of fuel here. We have the price per gallon. You can see my mouse here. It also has the N number. So if you have to have two different sheets in some places, for instance, at Ogden, you have to do this. Most places you don't. It's just the one receipt. As long as if the credit card receipt has all the information, then you can just upload that. All right. Can anybody tell me what is wrong here? If you're trying to answer and I'm not hearing you, just go ahead and unmute. How many can read that 8645?
I can.
This is actually one of the better ones. I've seen some that get uploaded and you can't even read it. Please check the focus before uploading. Here's another one. Now, the question I have is, oops. I pushed my button too soon here. Did you tilt your head? It's really hard to read that. Why am I not? Here we go. So please just make sure it's upright. I've actually run into receipts that are upside down. That makes it really hard to read. As we go into the AIF, most people know how to use the flight log. I'm not going to talk about that, but I am going to talk about the front cover, the back cover, and a little bit about the fleet card. The front cover should be read before every single sortie. It's hard to read. I actually, due to an issue with 100-hour inspections, I wrote a report, and this should actually be reformatted. It's hard to read, but what we're going to talk about, hours. These hours are a hard limit. The mistake that was made is assuming that you can go over these hours. Now, if you read down in this little area here in this note, it may be too small on your screen. Don't worry about it. Next time you take a look at the AIF, you can go read this. But it actually says mid-cycle oil changes are due the last day of the 6th calendar month or 50 hours since the last oil change, plus or minus 10 hours, whichever comes first. That's the only one where you can overfly the hours. There is I should say, for a 100-hour inspection or an engine overhaul, you're allowed to fly to an inspection or maintenance facility if it's expired. Personally, if I saw, if that's happening on a regular basis, that's just planning where there's planning not being done by the squadron maintenance officer to make sure these things are done early. The due date is also a hard date, and it's done by the end of the month. Just ignore the day. So, for instance, the annual inspection says 3/31. Oh, sorry, I read that backwards because I always do date, month, year. So you can ignore the day. It's always the end of the month. I wish it just had the month name on there. So like the mid-cycle oil change should say Oct to 2021 instead of 10/31/2021. Finally, tire pressures. Tires must be checked for pressure before the first flight of every day. If you don't know if it's been checked earlier in the day, check it. But if the airplane has just come back from a sortie, you don't need to check it again. This is a requirement, and it's in 66-1. The pressures that are given, this is for 259 Charlie Papa, the pressures that are given are minimums. They are hard minimums. You can go over these by between 5 and 10%. 5% is usually all you need, all you really should go over, but I think on some tires you can go up to 10%. The back cover. This is dealing with loose removable equipment. Each item of loose removable equipment is assigned to the aircraft. If it's in that list down there, it is assigned to the aircraft. It is not to be moved to another aircraft. So, oh, I need to borrow a fuel strainer. No. It's not to be moved to another aircraft. We've had problems. I actually had one airplane, had two airplanes with no fuel strainers, and one airplane had three in it. So if it, and how do we check these things? The pilot in command needs to do the inventory beforehand. Now, if he has an air crew, there's nothing wrong with the mission observer or mission scanner or airborne photographer helping out to verify the inventory. That's acceptable. Post-flight, if there's anything missing, it gets reported in AMRAD as a discrepancy. And this is the PIC is responsible for anything that's missing. I want to put 2 headsets in every aircraft, assigned to every aircraft, so we always have them. They're just very expensive, and I haven't done it yet because I can't get people. I want people to be verifying this inventory before every sortie. That way we can make sure we don't lose equipment in the future. It starts to get very expensive after a while. Oh, note, if you're using headsets and they're broken, take the headset out of the aircraft, write it up in AMRAD, that way we know about it. The fleet cards, I believe ours look like this, if I remember correctly. To use the fleet card, to make it simple, mission symbol A, which means, whether it's an A0, A24, A12, A7, use it. The exception to that is Salt Lake City, mainly because the pilots would have to get the card, drive over to TAC Air, do the charge, drive back to the wing building, and that's a little bit more than we need. So it's allowed for the line receipt that you get after fueling to upload that to Wimmers. TAC Air usually sends the invoice to Nick the next day, and he'll upload it. And if he can see the line receipt and he can see the invoice, he can take care of all of that without a problem. That line receipt for Salt Lake City, by the way, put your name and your phone number on there as the pilot. That way, if Nick has any problems, he can find it. B mission symbols. Don't use it unless you are specifically told to do so by an incident commander, air operations section chief, or air operations branch director. And mission symbol C, don't use it. Finally, the FBOs are not to have this on file with our accounts. I've had that happen before. Don't do this. We have to show the card every single time. Fuel load. It's fairly straightforward. We filled to the lowest placard quantity. For instance, this is the placards from the 182. And you'll notice that lower placard it'll say capacity 32 US gallons, usable to bottom of filler indicator tab. So you would fill that to the bottom of the indicator tab. There is also holes, and then you have full. Whereas if you look in the 172, there's only 2 levels. It's either full or at the bottom of the filler neck. And that's on the newer 172s. So if there's no placard, you fill the tank. We don't fill the tanks full. And the main reason for this is it allows us to have as much useful load as possible before a sortie starts. Otherwise, we'd have to be unloading fuel, which is expensive. On pre-flight, the pilot in command is not restricted on adding any fuel. He can fill that tank. He can fill it all the way full if necessary. That's perfectly valid. The fuel load, the reduced fuel load, is after a sortie, not before. Adds B. The main thing we need to worry about with adds B, add this to your checklist, is you need to check the call sign. On all of our G1000 aircraft, if you bring up the timer reference page on the PFD, at the bottom there is going to be a call sign. Now you may think, oh, it never changes. Yes, yes it does. Whenever Cap USAF flies our airplanes, and they can fly them at any time, they have to change the call sign. So, and maybe they forget to change it back. Just check it. Make sure it says Cap 43, whatever for Cap 43 something for the aircraft. ADS-B is, correction, we're going to be putting spot X's in the aircraft. We don't have them already in there in all the aircraft. There will be mounting brackets for the right side yoke, so it can sit on there when it for in flight. Otherwise, we have to just store it out of the sun. It's not going to be required as long as there's ADS-B coverage. But if there's no ADS-B coverage, which in many parts of the state we don't have that, it would be a good idea for Spot X to be put on. For training missions and actual missions, the incident commander may require Spot X to be operable. WIMRs. Now we're just going to talk a little bit about some things in WIMRs. Mainly airport code. They need to be all caps. I'm going to show an example on the next page. Also, if the airport has it, you use the IACO 4-character code. So for Salt Lake City, it's KSLC, not SLC. And for the airports in Utah that we fly into that don't have an IACO code, for instance, Salt Lake number 2 is U42. That's acceptable. The reason why we want these airport codes this way is because WIMRs can't tell the different. You can't tell that lowercase SLC, uppercase SLC, mixed case SLC, lowercase KSLC, uppercase KSLC. They're all the same thing. WIMRs can't tell that. They're all different things. And so when we do reports, we'll end up with multiple different reports for Salt Lake City. Sortie approval. Finally, this is dealing with sortie approval. There's only 2 missions where we have that right now. One is PCT, the other is the onboarding return to flight mission. Both of Barry Albright currently is handling the PCT. I'm handling the onboarding return to flight because it's a MIPR funded mission. Next fiscal year, it'll change to a normally funded mission, at which point I'll probably turn it over to Stan Eval to manage. The main reason for the approval before the sortie starts is for money. We have to have the money, especially on the onboarding new return to flight, because if we overdraw, then the wing has to pay for it. And I don't want to get into that situation when it's easy to look and make sure we've got the money before we fly. And then I can ask for more money. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, you ought to add O-rides to that as well.
Okay.
Because that is also a budget-driven.
That's budget-driven. So the difference, so sortie, I'm talking individual sortie approvals before you fly. With orientation flights, just get those approved and just ask for how many sorties you need beforehand and go take care of it. I will let Todd decide whether he wants to do individual sortie approvals or not on those. But yes, you do need to ask for orientation flights, and it's the same with Form 591s. You have to ask before you put the sortie in. But with this sortie approval, what I'm talking about is 48, especially with new onboarding, new pilots and return to flight. 48 hours before, send me an email message, send me an email or a text message and saying, hey, can we get approval for this sortie? All right. And then the other issue we see in WIMRs is the aircraft type. 753 Charlie Papa is a 182 G1000 turbo. It can, actually, I should say that 323 Charlie Papa is a Cessna 206 G1000 turbo, but it automatically comes in as a 206 G1000 and it misses the turbo. That the type is different, even though the N number is exactly the same, if the type is different, it shows up as two different aircraft. And so there are reports that get messed up because of it. So let me show you an example here. I redacted the names. So like, for instance, approval, you'll notice that we have approved Utah Wing DO, but there have been sorties that have been flown, but not approved. Here's an example of a the wrong 3-character code. It should be KSLC. And down here, a mixed case. Now, by the way, yes, one Salt Lake City, one St. George. I have seen this for every single squadron. So this is just an example I was able to find. Please make it so that, so we see KSPK, KOGD, KSGU. This is how we want to see these things capitalized and use the 4 character codes. All right, finally, OpsQuals, Unique services. I've said this and I'll say it again, and the video actually shows you how to get to it. What do I need is your friend. If you ever run into a problem getting a flight, if you can't get a flight released, if there's any of those kind of issues, go into what do I need and find out and see what the problem is. Usually it's an appointment. Like if somebody took their Form 5, they're an instructor, they've been approved, but they haven't been appointed to be an instructor, they cannot be an instructor for purposes of release. And so with an appointment, you actually have to come to me, go to your squadron commander. Your squadron commander will talk to me, and we'll get taken care of for appointments for instructor pilots, orientation pilots, check pilots, any of those kind of things. All right. So, any questions? And I'm going to stop sharing now so that I can actually see people, the people actually be able to see me as part of these questions. All right. How many people have questions today? Oh, come on. I can't have done this that well.
Or they're all asleep.
Yeah. I have a droning voice. It's easy to put people to sleep.
We're just marveling, Lance, at all the wisdom that's poured forth over the last half hour or so.
Who do I have in here, by the way?
Team people.
Mission observer,
Yeah.
AP, and FRO.
All right. So this was, so for instance, flight release officers, check those fields before you release. Things like airport codes and aircraft type and so forth. All right. So now I'm going to open it up for any other questions that anybody has in general for operations or emergency services. Mainly because, hold it, because I go for another 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and then we're done.
Okay, Lance.
Yes.
It was pointed out in the specialty track that some people in operations need to serve at the wing level, and that the wing level is serving as a bottleneck for operations aspirants.
It is a bottleneck, but anybody can come talk to me, and, about that. I will I will take people and figure out something for them to do so that they can work at the wing level. I like people having one small, one job to do. Scott May, for instance, is handling gliders. If I need a second if he needs an assistant, that still counts for the operation specialty track. Same with orientation flights. Flight operations, I need a new flight operations officer because Barry Albright is going to be moving to Florida to be with his, he wants to be around his grandkids. And so I need a new flight, somebody to handle flight operations. And I'm always asking, I send emails out and I never hear back from anybody. So I offer, and I have no problem at all putting people on my staff to do things so that they can advance to senior and master in operations. The same as with Stan Eval. If somebody wants to advance in Stan Eval, they may have to be at the wing level. That's straightforward. I'll just talk to Greg Soder and say, hey, do you need another assistant?
Okay.
So that's, and it's with same with emergency services. I would talk to Jim Stewart. He'll take people that they want to do that. That's not an issue. I'll give up things. I'll supervise everybody and give up little small jobs to everybody. So don't be afraid to ask me, hey, I need to do something. That's how I ended up in this position, actually, is because I went to Jason Hess years ago and I said, I need a wing staff. I need to be on wing, operations. What can I do? And I asked him, he says, well, he said to me, let me think about it. A couple months later, I ended up doing orientation flights.
Okay, it was just mentioned as a source of frustration for some people.
Yes. So just talk to me.
Okay.
If you're on operations, Stan Eval, or emergency services tracks, just send me an email. I will come up with something. I'll figure something out.
Just trying to think who the presenter was there so I can feed that back to them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Wiley Brady was a presenter.
Who?
Wiley Brady was the presenter in that session.
Okay, I'll get with him offline.
What was that, Kent?
Question on the post-flight checklist and
Yes.
How are we doing on the post-flight checklist?
How are we doing?
Yeah, are we following it? Do we have any defects there?
I do not know at this time. That I would actually have to watch every single pilot to see if they are actually doing the post-flight checklist. That's another one where observers and scanners can help out with that. I see no problem with that being done after, inspecting various things to make sure it's done correctly. This is just more of an awareness for everyone because we've had the problems in the past and the checklist does exist. And yes, keep up to date on those standards and those regulations. When they change, go in and read them.
Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome. Other comments?
You made mention of the no training can be performed by the pilot during PCT supervising others in the airplane, but you could have somebody else in the airplane supervising that training, like a backseat trainer.
Yes.
Are we checking on that, reporting on that? Are we encouraging that so people get extra chances to train? How are we managing that?
that is being managed at the squadron level. So when PCTs are being done, I've noticed a couple squadrons will say to pilots, hey, if you're going to go fly, let us know. The operations officer, the emergency service officer will say, let us know so that we can put air crews together for you to so that they can go fly an effective PCT. Speaking of which,
I'll tell you that the Phantom Squadron is making an effort to do that, and we've appointed an emergency services training officer that's responsible for assembling those air crews for PCT flights.
Exactly. I think Salt Lake Senior Squadron is doing something similar. I believe St. George is doing something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if Weaver Minuteman is as well. So let me to make it a little bit where I'm getting this from. Let me share. All right. So this is the CAP Standard 71-4. And the main thing I'm talking about is this paragraph right here. Intent. A mission pilot. So what it says here specifically is that word right, is that sentence right there. Under no circumstances will an air crew member working on their own proficiency also serve in an instructor capacity for a trainee on the same sortie. This is why we can't train mission pilots, because to train a mission pilot, you have to have a mission pilot, but the only person who can fly a PCT is a mission pilot. So it's kind of this catch-22 situation. For other air crew positions, only the pilot can't train somebody else because they're always working on their own proficiency. All right. Oh, and one other little quick note, and pass this around to anybody who wasn't here. I know it's very popular to fly profile number 4. If you're a mission, this is meant for transport mission pilots to increase their experience, to get to the 200 hours so they can become mission pilots. This should rarely be flown by a mission pilot. And when I say rare, I'm thinking once a year. We have lots of other profiles they can fly. They can go fly a visual search. They can fly a video imaging. I do know Colonel Hess is going to be pushing for more airborne photographers. So do not be surprised if you're going to fly, you end up flying a lot of these. As he said this morning, search and rescue is going away, but video imaging is not. Electronic search, we get those on occasionally. Let's see, another one, mountain search. I would expect all of my pilots to do this on a regular basis because what is it? We go flying where somebody just crashed and we're flying in very similar conditions and we're going on purpose up close to the rocks. I want my pilots very good, very proficient at flying mountain search. Airborne, I mean, what is it? Video imaging. Pilots just need to be able to provide a stable platform, but a mountain search, go fly in various conditions. So you're very proficient at it. Okay. Any other questions? Let me show one last thing and then we'll, because we have to, let me share mission symbols so that you'll see how we found out that our pilots did need to have a current Form 5 to get paid for. This gray spot right here was added. The previous, this is CAP Standard 72-2 mission symbols. It was published in November. The last version was in November. This version was the 15th of March. And it says onboarding Form 5s can be funded on the Wing A7B7 mission. And then if you come down here to A24, which is return to flight for training for pilots, return to flight Form 5s can be funded on the Wing A7B7 mission. So please read through these. It's important. These things change on a regular basis. And new information gets put in there, and you'll be able to, and when it comes to regulations, I'll tell people this all the time, follow what the regulation says. You may hear people say, well, that's not the intent of the regulation. No, that's not how you read. You follow what the regulation says. Don't try to read things into it. Just follow exactly what it says. All right?
Lance,
Yes.
hop here.
Yes.
A comment about 104s. They're meant to be filled out, and
Yes.
In true government and military fashion, blanks are left for the creativity of the reviewer, and you may not like their creativity, so don't leave any blanks.
Yes. Yes. If something does, it says put an NA in there, not applicable. And I know emergency services. So Jim Stewart is working on a new format of how the summary and the other information in the debrief 104 should be laid out. He's working on that right now. They will be teaching that as part of emergency services. And then as part of proficiency, you can do that on the proficiency, the PCT sorties. It's filling out the 104 debrief and the brief is not required on orientation flights. Though I would recommend it on, if you go fly on Utah MISC on a C-12, I would recommend you do it there too. All right. So I'm done. And thank you very much. For anybody, if you know of anybody in your squadron who didn't see this, who's a pilot or an aircrew member, an FRO, please point it out. It was I believe it was recorded, and this is really good information. I do send out emails. Please read them. I feel like sometimes I'll send out an email to solve these issues and nobody reads them. They just ignore them. Oh, that's another email from Lance, and they just throw it away. So I'd rather talk about other things at Wing Conference than little minutia like this that I put into emails or in the best current practices. So
how can we watch the recording? I missed the first 20 minutes.
Kent, you know? Marilyn, I don't.
Hey, this is Steve. Lance, we'll
Yes.
have the recordings all made available, Marilyn, so you'll be able to see them. Mike Dyke is going to put them all together in one site so everybody can get access to them.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, Lance.
Very well done.